That's the core idea here. That's what we're thinking about. If we believe in God, if we trust in God, we understand and accept that He is the God of glory. But what then do we do with this truth? What are the implications of this truth?
Welcome to Encounter the Truth with Jonathan Griffiths. I'm Steve Hiller. And Jonathan, you can't ask a question like that and not expect me to ask you for an answer there. What are the implications of this truth?
Well, Steve, that's what we're going to spend the message exploring and thinking about today, of course. But if we really believe that God is truly glorious, profoundly glorious, then it does mean that the world, in a very real sense, revolves around Him. It is about Him. And that's rather hard for us to compute because we are so conditioned to believe that the world revolves around us.
Yeah.
And everything that's happening is ultimately about me. That's what we all are inclined to think. But the Bible would reshape our thinking, reorientate our thinking around God Himself and say, no, the God of glory is at the center of everything. And that means that my life needs to be about Him, about responding to His glory, about worshiping Him, and about bringing Him glory. And we're going to explore that thought a little bit more today.
Well, that's exactly what we're going to do as we begin this message called The Glorious God. Here is Jonathan.
Well, thousands gathered here in Ottawa on Monday night to watch those spectacular fireworks that lit up the night sky to mark Canada Day. Thousands gathered in Washington on Thursday to see the nation's military power on display in honor of the 4th of July and that great celebration. When we lived in the UK, we were aware of how keen the crowds were to gather and to jostle just to catch a glimpse of a great royal event, whether it be a wedding or a jubilee celebration, to see something majestic and beautiful and historic in its proportions. As human beings, we long to see and experience something great, something beyond the ordinary and the everyday, something of wider significance and greater worth. We are naturally hungry for glory. We're attracted to glory. We're seeking glory. Our theme this morning is the theme of glory, but not of the fading glories of this world. True glory, the glory of God Himself. In last week's sermon, I think I had at least 5 substantial points to share with you. You'll be gladdened to hear that this week I have only 2 points, just 2 points. And the first one is simply this: God is entirely glorious. God is thoroughly glorious, totally glorious. That's a truth that is proclaimed and celebrated and wondered at throughout the Scriptures from cover to cover. Imagining God in His glory entering Jerusalem, David cries out in Psalm 24 in a very famous psalm, "Lift up your heads, O you gates. Be lifted up, you ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in." Who is this King of glory, asks David. The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O you gates. Lift them up, you ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is He, this King of glory? The Lord Almighty. He is the King of glory. This language of glory, it's used quite a lot in the Bible, and it's probably used in a variety of ways with some difference of nuance from place to place. At the most fundamental level, at the basic level, the word glory speaks of the excellence of God Himself, His worth and His beauty, the perfections of His character, His holiness, and His great power. Glory refers in a fundamental way to the excellence of God Himself. But the language of glory is also used in the Scriptures to speak of the visible manifestation of God's worth and His majesty, the visible expression of the fact that the glorious God is present. So you remember when the people of Israel traveled away from slavery in Egypt and toward the promised land that God would give them, His glory was present and visible to them in the cloud that led them by day and the pillar of fire that led them by night. When Moses met with God at Mount Sinai, God was present there in His glory. And the cloud and the fire, they were the visible manifestation that God was there at the mountaintop. Exodus 24 and verse 15, when Moses went up on the mountain, the cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord settled on Mount Sinai. For 6 days the cloud covered the mountain, and on the seventh day the Lord called to Moses from within the cloud. To the Israelites, the glory of the Lord looked like a consuming fire on top of the mountain. Then Moses entered the cloud as he went up on the mountain. Earlier in our series, we thought about that famous incident when Moses asked if he could see the glory of God. Maybe you remember that if you were here. This is Exodus 33. I'll just remind us of this incident because it's so significant for the revelation of who he is. The Israelites, they've sinned greatly at this point by making and worshiping that golden calf, that idol, while Moses was up on the mountain with the Lord. But the Lord has been gracious to his people, and he's not cast them off as they might deserve to be cast off. He's promised to continue with them on their journey. And now Moses asks the big question. This is Exodus 33 and verse 18. Then Moses said, "Now show me your glory." And the Lord said, "I will cause all my goodness to pass in front of you, and I will proclaim my name, the Lord, in your presence. I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy. I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion." But he said, "You cannot see my face, for no one may see me and live." Then the Lord said, "There is a place near me where you may stand on a rock. When my glory passes by, I will put you in a cleft in the rock and cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will remove my hand and you will see my back, but my face must not be seen." Moses, as a man of God, knows that seeing and beholding the glory of God would be a wonderful thing. It would be a majestic thing. So that's what he longs for. That's what he asks for. And the Lord says, "I will make my character and my identity known to you and to the people in a special way." He's going to show Moses his goodness. He's going to have compassion on the needy. Those are real aspects of his glory, the beauty and the wonder of who he is. He's going to make himself known. But a full, unfiltered display of the glory of God, it would be too much for Moses. It would be too much for anyone. But Moses is given a partial and a limited display, shielded from a distance. Now, in Moses' desire to see something of the glory of God, I think we do see a wholesome and a right desire. We see an appropriate longing for the people of God. The glory of God, it's wonderful. Seeing God as he truly is, it would be majestic. It would be magnificent. But God's reaction to Moses' request, it shows us that it's not quite that easy for sinful people to see the unfiltered glory of God. Another great figure from the Old Testament who learned something of this lesson for himself and who sees something of the Lord's glory in his day is the prophet Isaiah. In his commissioning in Isaiah 6, he's given a great vision. And the vision and then the prophet's own response to the vision, they're significant for us. Isaiah chapter 6 and verse 1. "In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord seated on a throne, high and exalted, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him were seraphs, each with 6 wings. With 2 wings they covered their faces, and with 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they were flying. And they were calling to one another, 'Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory.' And the sound of their voices, the doorpost shook, and the temple was filled with smoke." Visible manifestation of the glory of God. "Woe to me," I cried, "I am ruined. For I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. And my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty." In this vision at his commissioning, Isaiah sees something of the glorious Lord as he truly is. He sees a powerful manifestation of his presence, and immediately he cries, "Woe is me, I am undone." The Lord is so great. He is so holy. He is so majestic. I've seen him, but I am so unlike him, so tainted and so defiled by sin. And surely this exposure to the glorious Lord as he is, surely this will lead to my ruin, my undoing, even my destruction. It's akin, isn't it, to approaching the inner chamber of a nuclear reactor. The sheer radiance of the energy is more than any of us could safely absorb in our natural state. The Old Testament, it reveals God as being entirely glorious, but as well as being unapproachable in that glory. His glory, it's too bright, it's too radiant, too pure for sinners like us to approach him. That's the Old Testament presentation in a nutshell. Well, the New Testament picks up this theme of the glory of God, but it shows us now that in the coming of Jesus Christ, the Son of God incarnate, something both radical and very, very wonderful has taken place. A verse we return to again and again throughout this sermon series is John chapter 1 and verse 14. It's one of the most important verses, actually bridging the Old Testament and the New. And it'll be familiar, many will have it memorized, I'm sure. Speaking of Jesus, at John 1:14, it says this: "The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only who came from the Father, full of grace and truth."
You're listening to Encounter the Truth with Jonathan Griffiths and a message called The Glorious God. It's part of a larger series called Who is Like Our God, where we're taking a look at some of the characteristics and attributes of God. If you missed any broadcast in the series, you can always come to our website and listen online. Just stop by encounterthetruth.org. You know, old age often gets bad press. A lot of people associate old age with grumpiness and aches and pains, even loneliness and isolation. Really something that a lot of us might be looking forward to or relish while we're there. But pastor and Bible teacher Derek Prime was in his 80s when he wrote a book called A Good Old Age. And in this book, he shows us that there's another way to view old age. He actually, in this book, guides us through 26 Christian priorities that we should hold onto in later life. And he does this with biblical wisdom and practical advice, helping us navigate the unique challenges and joys that old age can bring. We'd love to send you a copy of this book, A Good Old Age, as you send a gift of any amount and support Encounter the Truth this month. You can find out more or give online when you come to encounterthetruth.org. Or you can call us at 833-99-TRUTH. That's 1-833-998-7884. Or again, the website, encounterthetruth.org. All right, back to the message. Here is Jonathan.
Moses longed to see the glory of God, but God told him, "You cannot see me in my glory. You cannot see me and live." Isaiah saw something of the glory of God in a vision, but he feared that even in this vision he would be destroyed. But now in Jesus, says John, we have seen the glory of God. As God the Son became flesh, became human, the glorious God came to us in a way that we could now see him and know him without being consumed by the sheer radiance of his holiness and majesty. Now, this idea of seeing the glory of God in the person of Jesus Christ, it is a theme that John really explores and develops throughout his gospel. This is, if you like, a particular emphasis of John's gospel. Each of the four gospels have particular emphases they draw out. And John really wants us to see this from the life of Jesus. He wants us to see that as we look at the works of Jesus, watch the miracles of Jesus, hear the words of Jesus, we do have before our eyes the very unfolding and revealing of the glory of the eternal God. So when Jesus performs his first miracle there in John chapter 2, the turning of the water into wine at the wedding in Cana, John records this for us, chapter 2 and verse 11. This, the first of his miraculous signs, Jesus performed at Cana in Galilee. He thus revealed his glory, and his disciples put their faith in him. The miracles of Jesus, they reveal his glory. They give us a window into his majesty and power and his beauty. But as the gospel account goes on, Jesus shows us that the true moment, the greatest moment of the revelation of glory, when we see the glory of God revealed most profoundly and most radiantly, it is actually, surprisingly, paradoxically, it is actually as Jesus dies on the cross. In John chapter 12, Jesus is giving one of his very significant predictions of his death, and it's remarkable how he speaks of that death. Perhaps you turn there with me. It's John 12, and I'm reading here from verse 23. Jesus replied, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. I tell you that unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. The man who loves his life will lose it, while the man who hates his life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, my servant also will be. My Father will honor the one who serves me. Now my heart is troubled, and what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? No, it was for this very reason I came to this hour. Father, glorify your name." Then a voice came from heaven, "I have glorified it, and will glorify it again." The crowd that was there heard it and said that it had thundered. Others said an angel had spoken to him. What is the moment of glorification in John's Gospel? The time when the glory of God shines most clearly through the person and work of Jesus. It is at the cross, where the kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, to give life, of course, to many. It's at the cross, at the place of torment and of agony, a place from which, an hour from which Jesus might have asked to be saved. But no, he came for that hour, because the Father's name would be revealed in that hour as glorious. The Father's name would be lifted up and exalted as the Son dies even for sinners like us. Now, we need to just pause here for a moment and take all that in. It's a very significant thing that Jesus is saying here and that John is showing us here. God is glorious. He is radiant in his power and his majesty, his holiness and his goodness. He is so glorious that Moses couldn't look on him in his glory and live. But in Jesus, we now see the glory of God. We see his glory in the miracles he performs and in the words he speaks. But the theme of the glory, the revelation of the glory, it crescendos, it reaches its pinnacle at the very moment where God the Son dies in agony and humility for the sin of his people. Now, what does all that tell us about our glorious God, about who he is, about what his glory is like? If that's the moment of the revelation of the glory of the eternal God, what kind of God is this? If the ugliness and the agony and the shame of the cross is the glory of the all-glorious God, well, who is this God we worship? Who is this Lord we adore? Well, I think all this tells us that he is the God of mercy and compassion. He is the God of grace and of justice. That's who he is. He is the God of love untold, of grace unfathomable, the God whose glory it is to die for rebellious, lost, and hopeless creatures, the God whose radiant glory is revealed as he gives his one and only Son for you and for me. Our God is the God of glory. I wonder this morning if you know him as he truly is. I wonder if with the eyes of faith you have seen him in his glory in the person of his Son. I wonder if the sheer radiance of his glory and his majesty has transformed your life, has shone in to your heart. If you don't know him yet, let me say you can know him. If you haven't received him yet, let me say you can receive him. You can come to him through trusting in his Son and receiving the love and the grace and the mercy that was poured out for you at Calvary. That is quite simply the offer of the gospel. And it's for you, it's for me, it's for all who will believe. God is glorious. He's totally glorious, perfectly glorious, flawlessly glorious. There are very beautiful things to be found in this world, things that have a certain glory about them. You know, you think about a very wonderful jewel, a beautiful diamond or sapphire or ruby. The other day I was with the children downtown and we were doing a little window shopping in the Rideau Center. And I don't know why I thought of doing this. We wandered into Tiffany's. This was me in shorts and a t-shirt with 3 little kids, and the security guard was kind of looking, wondering what was going on. Anyway, we kind of glanced through the display cases. And, you know, there's some really beautiful jewels in that shop. And a really beautiful jewel, well cut, shown in the right light. It can be a breathtaking thing. But there's no such thing, is there, as a totally flawless jewel. Not even the finest diamond to be found in the display cases at Tiffany's can be said to be without fault, without flaw of any kind. Diamonds are graded, I gather, on their clarity, their lack of imperfection. And you can find some diamonds, some very expensive diamonds, that are pretty close to perfect. But the totally flawless diamond, totally clear, totally brilliant, completely unmarred, it doesn't exist. But God is flawless in his perfection and his beauty, his holiness and his goodness, his wisdom and his knowledge. He is totally glorious in every way. Now, that's the core idea here. That's what we're thinking about. I don't think that's too hard to take on board. If we believe in God, if we trust in God, we understand and accept that he is the God of glory. But what then do we do with this truth? What are the implications of this truth? Well, that brings us to our second point, point 2 of 2. If God is all glorious then, well, our purpose is to give him glory. Our purpose is to bring him glory. That's where this truth simply leads us. It can be an agonizing question, but a question we must all ask. What is the purpose of my life? Why am I here on earth? Last year, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in the United States issued a startling report showing that suicide rates over the last decade or so have been rising in almost every American state. It raises the obvious question of causation, of why that's happening. And of course, numerous factors will feed into that troubling trend. But I was very interested to read an opinion piece in the New York Times by a behavioral scientist named Clay Routledge. And I'd like to read for you from his piece. I think what he says is actually very significant. He writes this: "Many argue that this is a crisis of mental health care, that people are not getting the services they need. The proposed solution is better therapies, more effective antidepressants, and greater access to treatment. This assessment may be correct. However, the suicide rate has increased even as more people are seeking treatment for depression and anxiety, and even as treatment for those conditions has become more widely available. An additional explanation seems to be needed." As a behavioral scientist who studies basic psychological needs, including the need for meaning, I am convinced that our nation's suicide crisis is in part a crisis of meaninglessness. We are a species that strives not just for survival, but also for significance. We want lives that matter. A felt lack of meaning in one's life has been linked to alcohol and drug abuse, depression, anxiety, and yes, suicide. And when people experience loss, stress, or trauma, it is those who believe that their lives have purpose who are best able to cope with and recover from distress. What is the purpose of my life? Where is meaning to be found? It is a vitally important question. In fact, you may be here today precisely because you are asking that question, you are grappling with that question, because that very question is troubling you and you don't have an answer for it. Well, the Bible doesn't have a quick one-line answer for us. There isn't a single verse that I can point you to that sums everything up really tidily. But if we look at the whole teaching of Scripture, at the whole shape of what God has made known to us in His Word, then I think an answer emerges for us pretty quickly and pretty clearly. The Lord makes it clear throughout His Word that the heart of His purpose in all things is for His glory to be seen and experienced and reflected by the people He has made.
This is Encounter the Truth with Jonathan Griffiths, a message called The Glorious God. And we have to pause the message right here. Hope you'll make it a point to tune in next time as we continue this message taking a look at the glories of our God. You ever miss a broadcast? Come to the website. You can always listen online. You can stream the program or download an MP3. That's at encounterthetruth.org. For Jonathan and for our producer, Mark Bretta, I'm Steve Hiller, and I hope you'll join us next time.